Hello, everybody. This is for AAMI News in Conversation. We're here at the AAMI Exchange, and I'm sitting down here with two absolutely fantastic HTM educators from Canada. If you actually were here at the Exchange, you may have found their students walking around. But why don't you two introduce yourselves?
All right, so my name's James Linton. I'm program coordinator and professor at Clair College. Been there a couple of years. Before there, it's at another institution, but we don't need to worry about them.
My name is Jim Durocher. I am another full-time faculty at Clair College in Windsor, and between the two of us, we pretty much designed and developed that biomedical program that is currently existing.
That's awesome. And that was kind of one of the things I really wanted to talk to you guys about today is, this designing of this biomed program, talk a little bit about the pipeline. But so let's start from the basics. Let's start with the program itself. What does it do? And what are you hoping that your students are taking out of it to then transfer into the HTM field?
So we did sort of a complete rebuild about 3 or so years ago. We tore down everything that was part of the program because it was very old. It was very academic based. And so we said, you know what, that isn't what it needs to be. So the first thing we did was we redeveloped our program advisory committee. We invited people like Danielle to sit on it, a whole bunch of people from industry, and presented them with an idea that, look, biomed, when we graduated, you were coming out and you were working Monday to Friday, 8 to 4 in some basement of a hospital, and that was going to be 40 years of your life. Now it's, do you want to go into dialysis? Do you want to go into imaging? Do you want to go into capital planning, management, cybersecurity, prosthetics, like all these different areas? And so we thought, you know what, there's no way that we can make our students perfect at any of these. So we need to focus on the core, which is let's get a lot of hands-on time with the equipment. And then after that, you know what, let's give them a little taste of each of these specialties so that they know, oh my gosh, I like biomed, but you know what, imaging, that's where it's at for me. And we've had a couple students that have really surprised us that we thought, I'm not sure what area they're going to go into, and it's, oh, I love imaging. Oh, okay, sure. And it just lets them go, and then that way when they get hired by a company, they've got a taste of everything. So if you have an opening and you need medical imaging, our students are ready. You want dialysis, they're ready. And it's not such a shock to the system.
It provides a large background information on a lot of different devices so that when they enter the field, they can get caught up quickly to the modern devices that they're going to be working on.
And I'd say another thing that we did was we decided, look, we can't be stuck in the current either. We don't want to do a redesign 10 years from now. So we need to always be changing, but we need to think what's in the future. Well, one of the first things we did is we went out and we bought 10 VR systems so we can start letting our students use that. We're in talks with lots of people here hoping to get more VR software. Aside from that, we went out, we bought a 3D printer just for our shop. Our college does have some, but to eliminate any barriers, we bought our own, and now we have a class dedicated completely to 3D design. We're hoping to get one dedicated to cybersecurity, and we're trying to stay as cutting edge as we can.
Staying ahead of the curve. I like to hear that. And I know for a certain fact that it sounds like that it would make your students pretty darn hireable. Is that the end goal? You want them to come straight out of your course, straight into a job?
Absolutely. I mean, we want them to be able to, look, if you want to get into design, there's a pathway program that we help design at University of Windsor where they can do 1 year of 3 semesters back to back, get a degree, move into design, no problem. Or you can head right to work. And I'd say the only issue we've hit with that has been because we're Canadian. We found a lot of HR departments here, oh, I'm Canadian, and they go, resume in the trash. So we've been going around this conference and really educating people and saying, look, we qualify under the old NAFTA. If you want to hire a student, all you got to do is give them a job offer, say, hey, in this job, they're going to report to this senior engineer, whatever the case. They give that to the student takes that to the border, which is 5 minutes from our school. And many of our students actually have parents who work in the U.S. They hand it in with about $150, I believe it is.
About 150, 200 Canadian.
And they're ready to go in about 2 weeks.
Wow.
So it's super easy, and we've really been trying to push that everywhere we go because from our lab, you could I mean, theoretically, throw a rock and hit Detroit. We are closer to Henry Ford Health than the nearest American college. And so we want our students to start coming to the U.S. because we graduate 25 to 30 a year.
Yeah.
And so when we sit in on educator courses, and I'll never forget, I think we were in Cleveland, and one person said, what's your biggest accomplishment this year? And they said, we graduated 4. And they were all excited. And I'm like, we just graduated 23. And they're like, how? Well, I actually had a conversation with our boss about 2 weeks ago, because our program is waitlisted because we're over 40 people that want in. And I'm just like, hey, we need to take more. And he says, no, I think we're good. And I've been trying to really educate him now with, this need in the U.S. But I'd say our goal isn't just for our students to get jobs. I think my goal personally, and probably Jim's as well, is to come here 10 years from now and see all of our students here running the booth, in senior roles.
Oh, that's a great aspiration, and it's kind of a slap to the face to somebody like me who's constantly talking about, this need in the U.S. where our pipeline is drying up. We have so many open HTM jobs. People taking forever to hire a new biomed because it takes 4 to 6 months to fill a position. One of our demographic surveys last year revealed that a good chunk of U.S. HDOs are taking 4 to 6 months to fill a position. And we're sitting there going, okay, what is the cause of this? And it's a lot of schools in the U.S., they're drying up. There's entire states without a single program. And it sounds like you guys, you have the talent.
Yeah,
we just got to bring it over.
We have used a couple strategies to make sure we keep getting talent. For example, having things like VR, students see it and they go, oh, that's exciting. And it is, and it's exciting to teach with, and 3D printing. But we use that with our marketing department to say, hey, local media, do you want to come take a look? We have capstones. We invite local media. They'll do a news story. When COVID first hit, we had a news story about us because we helped develop
one of the portable ventilator.
Prototype of a portable ventilator. We're always trying to do things and make it public. And I think it's another thing that I do with my students in my classes anyway is, hey, if you take the HTM in a box that was developed by AAMI, and if you go present it to your local high school, I actually give them bonuses. And the reason isn't just to promote the field, but it shows that they understand the field enough that they can go talk about it. And that sort of pipeline brings it in, because what I've noticed is anytime we give speeches or such to guidance counselors, the first thing we hear is, I need to put my son or daughter in this program.
That's their first goal, is get my kid to go into your program, and then I'm going to introduce the students to it as well.
And we have, almost every year, we've got brothers, sisters, cousins. As soon as one family member gets in, others want in, because they go, oh, wait, this is a job that seems interesting and it's secure.
Yeah. And you guys both shared some, recommendations that hopefully other educators are sitting here going, oh, wow, maybe I should do that. Do you have any other advice for educators in the U.S. or even abroad, anywhere, who's trying to get more HTM involvement?
With us, it happened to be a bit of a necessity, but at the college, when we are trying to draw in students, we really play to the market of, you want to help people, but you might not be a nurse. You might not feel like I can do the nursing role, but you still have that empathy. You still want to help people. This allows you to be the support team for the nursing staff, and playing with that mentality, it gets them to say, I'm still helping people. I'm still necessary. I'm not the be all end all. If I leave the job, it's not like it suddenly dries up, but I get to help out these people. And I know that every machine that leaves my shop, I can feel good at the end of the day knowing that machine helped keep someone alive, keep someone's family member alive and well, help them get better, and really play into that empathy role, because that's one of the biggest things that we need out in the field. Well, think about putting your mother on that machine. Would you trust that machine? If every machine you're working on has that same mentality, then you're going to be an excellent tech. Let's cultivate that a little bit more.
Absolutely. We want to tap into that, because everyone that's here today if they work at a hospital or go to a hospital, you can walk by a patient room and see someone benefiting, getting an extra day with their grandmother because of something you worked on. And so what we want to do is put that out to today's youth and say, look, you don't have to be a nurse. You don't have to be a doctor. You can even be bad with blood. That's fine. Biomed has grown in so many areas that even if you have always been into coding and IT, we have a place for you now where you can go home and, I always pick on carpentry, no reason, just because. And I say, look, you can make just as much as a carpenter, but you're going to go home and say, I made one hell of a kitchen today. Versus you can go home and say, I helped someone's grandmother meet their new grandchild today.
Right.
So when we do that, we really tap that emotion. And the reason we want to do that isn't just bring them in. It's because when our students graduate, we want them to have a sense of humility to go, you know what? All those people who in the past have just signed their name and slapped a sticker on, no, that's not okay, because I wouldn't want that for my family.
Gotcha. And this kind of leads to, we're talking about there's different kinds of BMEDs, there's different kinds of biomeds. Hopefully they have that mentality of, their end road is patient safety. But it also leads to, as we were talking about, different kind of career focuses. I was recently talking to you about this transition from, being somebody who's specifically HTM, device maintenance, to somebody who wants to design their own devices. How do you take that knowledge and transfer it over? Is it valuable in any way?
So I trained as a biomed, then I became an engineer and so forth. And I stand by that technologists make the best engineers.
Easily. For
the simple reason that an engineer is taught a lot of theory, and they are taught to build a machine that will not break. But as we know, I could hand a clinician, I'm not going to say nurse, clinician, a cast iron IV pump, and it'll come back to me at lunch in 2 pieces.
I found it that way. How did that happen?
Exactly. And so, whereas an engineer will say, okay, here's this solid item that can never be taken apart, like an iPhone, for example, a technician is going to look at it and build it more Android-like, where it's, well, if the screen breaks, it's one screw. If this breaks, a technician knows that there's going to be repair and maintenance. And so when you can build that in, I had a machine I worked on, I don't think it exists anymore, called a Parada RDS. And this thing, it filled pill vials, and there was one little dangly cable that would bounce against the ground all the time, and you had to switch it out. Well, the spot that you had to actually physically get your hands in, this machine was about 12 foot by 6 feet high and about 2 feet wide.
Big machine.
There was one spot you could reach in that was 6 inches wide to 8 inches wide by 4 feet high. How are you supposed to work on that?
Yeah.
All they would have needed to do is put a hinge somewhere else, and you could open the whole thing up, and it would have been 10 times easier. Replacing one cable would take 2 hours. One hinge, we could do that in 5 minutes.
And this is a common theme. Now, more and more devices nowadays are much more approachable in that regard, whether that is part of the right to repair movement or anything like that. You can usually see a device that was designed by an engineer or a device that was designed by an engineer who had to fix something before. And there's little subtle things that it is a screw that has no bearing to anyone else except for the tech who has to take that one part out every 6 months. Now it's accessible.
Now, I'd say because we're from Windsor, right, it's a very automotive city. I like to put a lot of things in automotive terms for my students. So what I say is, look, a friend of mine had a Cadillac CTS, light bulb went out. Had to take it to the dealership. You got to pull off the front clip. It was like 4 hours of labor and hundreds of dollars to change a bulb.
Right.
I had an older BMW 3 Series. I had the same bulb go out. I went on YouTube how to change it just in case there was something weird. And I put a Torx screwdriver into a hole right above it. I gave it a quarter turn. The whole headlight popped out. I was done in under 30 seconds. That was designed with maintenance in mind. And I think that most places that train engineers don't think about that. And so that's why our students can really help with that as well, because to go back to the idea of patient safety and why we do this, some engineers want to build something for money. We train our students with their capstone projects that they do that we're building something to help someone. If you make money, that's great. But at the end of the day, helping someone is far more important.
Absolutely. And it sounds like if I have a device that I can maintain much more quickly, that means it's going to be on the floor a lot more often, helping people.
Downtown is so much smaller, and it would be able to come back in, get repaired, be back on the floor very quickly, and that's the name of the game is making sure that the patients are safe. And if we can do that, facilitate that faster, we're going to do that. And as James said about the capstone projects, like when we're looking at it, it isn't just build me a device. It's find a market that needs something and build to that need. Look to the problems, and knowing what the problem is, find a solution. And that really helps to keep their head in the game as well. When Project Creep starts to step in, look back at what you are trying to resolve. If that doesn't help, leave it out. Focus on the problem.
And that's just it. As part of our curriculum, our students have 2 project classes. So they get me in the fall, and I give them sort of a guardrail way of here's what I want you to build, but make it better. And then they get to Jim in the second semester, and he says, pick a disease and help it. And we give them a small budget and say, go. And so we've had some really interesting stuff come out lately. The more we've put into it, the better the projects have gotten. Mm-hmm. And it's, at some point we're going to have a couple actually get out there, I'm sure, and get designed and put to market. But in the meantime, it helps them problem solve, and it helps them decide, do I want to get into design? Because not everyone does.
I mean, regardless, I feel like hopefully anyone who's watching is going, wow, I want any of these students for any of my jobs.
That's the goal.
That's the goal, right? I did want to wrap up here by asking you guys if there's anything else you wanted to talk about that I haven't asked about.
I think the main thing is about hiring the students. If you see one of our 17 students out here, they're usually wearing either the white shirt, they say St. Clair College on it, or they'll just approach you saying, I'm a student, and while you can't hire me yet, it is easy to hire once they have graduated. And really just take a second to consider that. And if you are in need, our students can deliver. And as James said, we graduate 25, but to bring in the rest of Canada, we graduate about 200 a year. And from stats that I had heard, now this is just from years ago, the US might graduate 400, 500, but you have 10 times our population. Mm-hmm. And we're graduating half as many. Right. We can help fill that need.
I guess the other thing I'd kind of semi-humble brag about is I was on a webinar lately where they asked me, they asked one of my female students, what's it like being in such a male-dominated field? And I told Jim later, I said, in Canada, the field might be pretty male-dominated right now, but since I went to school 10 years ago, and since I went to school more than 10 years ago.
Yeah, right.
But since then, and every year that we have, I'd say we're 50-50, women to men. We have very, very diverse students come through. And it's something we're kind of proud of because, the market is changing and we're trying to get there.
I should note for the audience, James Linton here, he's on the Technology Management Council for AAMI. I know you've got aspirations maybe for the HTLC in the future.
I mean, I think I'm on about 3 committees right now with AAMI, maybe 4. I honestly lost track.
James can't say no to us.
I guess I'm on the awards committee now.
Oh, there you go.
A few others. Honestly, I think, next move, eventually maybe hop on directors and go from there. I view AAMI as the premier organization for biomeds because it's all about coming together as a community, giving back, and I figure a lot of people talk about their legacy. I talked to one of my previous professors the other day. He's going to retire in 2 years, and he was talking about his legacy. And I'm like, you know what? The only legacy I want is to have my students out there and to give back as much as possible. I can do a lot more being a member of a TMC committee with AAMI than I could working at a hospital. Working at a hospital, you're giving back 100%, but I can impact so many more. So AAMI's been a great organization for us. They've been super helpful and super accommodating. I mean, Danielle, I texted her the other day and said, hey, I've got a group of 6 students. And she says, when? And I'm like, I didn't tell you what we're talking about yet. She's like, that's okay.
Yeah.
So
We'll make
Amy
time.
has, and we used HTM in a box. I'll be honest, I use it because whenever we get called for guidance counselors coming in, I'm like, this is so easy to just turn on. I don't have to design it. It's got one of my favorite lines about biomed I've ever heard, and I use it all the time. I promise I normally give Amy credit. And they say, describe biomed, and I say, we are the roadies of healthcare. And I think that is the most bang on way of putting it, because I used to go to a lot of concerts, and without the roadies, those would have been pretty boring concerts, right? They wouldn't have gone on. And so when I saw these pictures and saw Danielle say that, it really clicked with me that we are, without us, doctors and nurses can't do their job. And every year that goes by, they rely so much more on technology that without that roadie, that hospital doesn't exist.
And then I should note that's Danielle McGeary, our Vice President of Healthcare Technology Management. Wow, it's been a long day. And I'll be putting in the link in our description about HTM in a box and other HTM resources. So we'll have that in the description of this video afterwards. But Jim, James, thanks guys. This has been a good time. I very much appreciate it.
And thank you for having us.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you got to go.
It's not even a slow clap. It's a real one.